Welcome back, listeners, for another episode of Justice League Revisited, as we cover Justice League Unlimited. Now we are in the unlimited portion, so there's no stopping us now. If you're, maybe this is your first episode, welcome to it. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. Across on the other side of the Zoom screen, my wonderful co-host, the voice of Wonder Woman, Susan Eisenberg. How are you?
I feel like, where's the applause button? We've been talking about it forever. Where is it?
We should, but we don't want anything fake on this show. Everything is real.
So what are you saying? That the applause for me would be fake?
No, I'm saying we don't want canned applause. Everyone knows that we do this in our secret lair beneath the Hall of Justice. So we don't want any prying eyes getting their hands on kryptonite or any destroyer suits or anything like that. So we'll.
Would it kill you to applaud when I come on? When I'm
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good to see you.
You too. This is exciting. We're moving through the episodes. I know we had a couple of, as we refer to them in the business, evergreens, where we could have played them anytime, and we kind of had a really nice chat with Ken Schreiner, the voice of Green Arrow. You just may have heard our episode with James Tucker talking about the series as a whole, as we kind of built up the back catalog for these other episodes we're intending to drop, which we have guests line up. Susan has to have her manager come in and approve all the scripts. So it's a terribly arduous process that we do here on the show.
Well, and you know, hair and makeup. Oh, wait, we're not on camera.
No.
Anywho, should we tell the lovely listeners who's our guest today?
Yes, I'm so excited to be covering such a fun episode, kid stuff, with the legendary director Joaquim Dos Santos. And I say legendary because the amount of projects he's worked on as a storyboard artist, as a producer, as an executive producer, as a director is just astonishing. I mean, going back to storyboards for the 2002 relaunch of He-Man, Legions of Superheroes in 2006, one of my favorite animated movies, Justice League New Frontier in 2008. Justice League is where he got to start with storyboard stuff, but then he got to start directing. If I'm not mistaken, we'll ask him, his first directing gig in animation came with Justice League Unlimited, but he also executive produced Voltron Legendary Defender, another reboot done by DreamWorks for Netflix, 2016 to 2018. And of course, anyone who is a Marvel Comics or a Spider-Man fan knows he was the director of the 2023 fantastic smash hit movie Across the Spider-Verse. So there's quite a pedigree involved here.
Right, and I remember him so vividly from Justice League, and he was a storyboard artist. So to watch that arc for him, to go from that to what his career has become, I've always kind of sat back, and I haven't seen him since the show ended, but I've always been like in my, just proud of him and happy for him because he's had such great success and he was so kind about doing this. I mean, once we tracked him down,
sure, yeah.
He was just like, absolutely, I'd love to do it. And I knew the fans would love to hear from, another one of the people that, were behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really excited for this episode.
I am too. And on this one, we're covering kid stuff, which was a fun episode. Going back to watch that one. And this, obviously, like I said, he directed some of the other ones that we've already covered, including Initiation.
That's right.
We have joining us now live via the Bat Computer, Joaquim Dos Santos for the first time. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is super exciting.
We're excited.
Okay, you don't get out much. Okay, this is super exciting. You need to get out more. But we have had you on our list for a really long time. And we've asked people, like, how do you get in touch with him? And finally, I was able to get you through your agent. And I begged and cajoled. And I said, please just, how do I reach this guy? And you were so lovely to respond, yes, I'd happily do it. So we thank you for joining us. And
oh my gosh.
I just remember you being the storyboard guy, and then you were a director guy. And so you like really had an arc on this series. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, I did. And I started on, Justice League before it became Unlimited.
Right.
And that's where I was storyboarding. And I remember being so excited to be invited to the records for the first time. And, it was always Andrea up front, the master. Yeah. And then it was Bruce and James and whoever was directing the episode. And then the story artist would sometimes get to sit in like the very back row and we'd get to watch what was going on, and just being so excited to watch you guys do all the magic that you do.
You've directed so many projects too since then, in executive producing stuff. When you look back at the way, because we've talked about this before with different people who are in voice work, how much the industry has changed where you don't have that, everyone's in the booth and they're playing off each other. When you see this, what kind of a change is it? Does it adjust how you go about directing and approaching projects, knowing that you don't have them there as an ensemble cast sometimes?
Frankly, and I mean, I'm shooting as transparent as I can here. It feels a lot less professional now.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know how to explain it. I think there was an air of sort of artistry and professionalism that took place in the booth, especially with the way that Andrea would sort of conduct things and keep things moving and be really succinct with her direction. Mm-hmm. She could hear three voices behind her say three different things and then get across to you guys, the performers, the exact thing you guys needed to hear. And it was this really beautiful orchestration of how all the back and forth went. That is gone. A lot of times now, self-deprecating a little bit, but it'll be me on a call like this going can you do it with more the thing? Can you do the thing? And I could see the people on the other side going all right, dude. All right. So yeah, it's and I'm sure you felt it to some extent as well, Susan. It's different. It's a different thing.
It is. It's totally different. And I'm just so grateful we had it, because it was so genuine. And you're right. It was so professional. You have people like Bruce Timm and Andrea Romano, and, you're coming to play, but, there are restraints on that play. You have to be professional. You have to, it was just such a joy. And we talk about that room all the time because people are still shocked that we were all together and there'd be 16 microphones, depending on how many guest stars we had that week. And, it was, we would rehearse it, we would perform it, then we would do pickups for it. And that just feels like how luxurious that all was and how lucky we all were.
I can remember so we were in Sherman Oaks, right? So we used to be in this big, tall Comerica building before the Sherman Oaks Galleria proper opened.
Right.
Up. Then they built this beautiful facility in the Sherman Oaks Galleria.
Right, which is a mall.
Which is a mall.
So it's very weird.
Yeah.
Because you're driving to the mall. And there is Warner Brothers Animation Building.
Yeah. But the facilities were great. And gorgeous. I remember walking into the booth and going oh my gosh, this is all top of the line stuff. And it just sort of added to this really special feeling.
Do you remember the giant Justice League poster in the space? Oh yeah. It was so special, to walk into that room. To walk into that building and see it. Yeah, and in fact, we took a bunch of photos up there on the top. Phil Lamar shared some of those photos because he had them in his personal stash, and that was really I hadn't seen them in forever. They're circulating. I have one I can send you.
Oh, please!
It was from our first year, and we look like we weren't babies, but we look like babies.
I know it.
It's just
Michael still had the shaved head from Smallville when he was doing Smallville.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I can remember they had this big row of stairs, and I would always try to be healthy and not take the elevators and take the stairs. But they had a big board room that was all glass right at the top. So whenever that thing was filled, if you were late to work, everybody's head would turn and watch you show up late to work. And the stairs had this almost like a cheese grater pattern on the face of them.
Yes.
That you could see through.
Yep.
And it would do something to my eyes. If I was trying to jog up those stairs to get up fast, it would confuse my brain and I would trip every single time. So I'd watch the entire boardroom, not only watch me be late, but also trip and fall on my face on the way up.
So they'd mock you. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So we love to have our guests talk about how they started because so many people want to do the things you do, voiceover, direction, storyboard, music, all of this. So we ask everybody, how did you end up at Warner Brothers Animation in the Sherman Oaks Galleria?
Well, I will say the Sherman Oaks Galleria was a destination throughout my entire childhood.
Okay, fair enough.
It was familiar territory.
Okay.
But yeah, I moved here from Portugal when I was 4, only child. So like drawing was my sibling. I would just draw when I was by myself. It was, if I got in trouble and I got sent to my room, I was like, totally fine. I'll just hang out in here for hours and just draw. And every summer I'd go back to Portugal to visit my dad's side of the family. And there too, they sort of were like, what is up with this guy? He doesn't want to go out. He doesn't want to go to the beach. He just wants to draw all the time. So I would not conform to the time change. I would stay up all through the night drawing and watching Betamax tapes of films that my aunt would record from Portuguese TV, which were all, it was like Ghostbusters and Alien and all the sci-fi crazy stuff.
The best movies ever.
The best movies ever. And then when I was back here in the States during the year, it was all Saturday morning cartoons and going to the movies and going to drive-ins. So it was film, comics, animation. That was just what I digested.
I heard you say that you were born in Portugal, but everything you said since then makes me think we might be related somehow. Everything else you've said, it's amazing. Your childhood sounds exactly like mine. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the formula, especially like when I look back now, as much nostalgia as I have for all this stuff. And I know we're not going to be on screen, but I got a big sort of like window into my nostalgia right behind me. I think we were sort of like fed the diet of like, hey, buy the toys, watch the shows, eat the cereal, buy the toys. And so that stew combined into me doing a lot of drawing, not a whole ton of studying. I went to all schools in the Valley. So I went to, Colfax Elementary, Walter Reed, and North Hollywood High. I barely escaped North Hollywood High. I had a chemistry teacher like beg me. He said, like, dude, just promise me you're going to draw for a living and that you're not going to ever do anything with chemistry. And so he gave me a passing grade on that. Almost zero college aspirations other than like going to Valley College because it's sort of what you did if you didn't have a goal. But I knew I loved drawing, and there was one kid in my class that went to Cal Arts, and I was like, ugh, I can't do it. My mom couldn't afford it. I didn't have the grades. So as I was going to Valley College, I'm working at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. There's a little technical school that opens up in Sherman Oaks called Associates in Art. And Associates in Art was essentially like animation production classes being taught by all the pros that were working at all the studios during the day. And at night, they were teaching classes there. So one, I had the benefit of growing up in the area, right? Like Southern California, West Coast. It was the industry. So walking home from school during high school, I was walking past Film Roman, watching them make The Simpsons. I knew it was there. I knew it was, I just didn't know how to breach that barrier. And when I started taking these classes, I met my storyboard teacher. His name was Fergal Riley. He was working on the Iron Giant at the time.
Oh, wow.
And he showed us a rough cut of the Iron Giant, like before it was in theaters, still had pencil tests and stuff in it. And my mind was so blown by what I was seeing and the fact that I love Disney, but it wasn't like singing animals and it wasn't a princess story. It was just a movie. And I can remember the end scene where he's flying up and the giant saying Superman and he explodes. And I'm bawling by the end of this film. And the lights come up. I'm expecting to be able to like clean myself up, through the credits. And there's no credits. It's a rough cut. So lights come up. And I just remember thinking like, I got to do everything I can to get into this industry and do this job. And he said, the secret to storyboarding is that like you're kind of secretly the director of the film. Before the director makes any decisions, he's usually looking at he or she is usually looking at your
blueprint,
boards, and it's kind of influencing their decision making. So that seemed really exciting. And then it was just kind of dumb luck after that. I had sort of built up a portfolio by taking the classes. And then I shopped at a local comic book store in Studio City that I'd been going to since I was a kid. And the owner there, I was friends with the owner, and he had a sketchbook, and he said, hey, anybody who draws who comes in here, just do a sketch. So I did a sketch, and a week later he calls me up. I had a pager at the time. He hits my pager. I'm like, oh, okay, this is Kat. So I call him up, and he says, there was a director from Sony here who saw your sketch and asked who you were. Can I give him like your number? So yeah, the line producer called me at the Coffee Bean and said, would you like to come work at Sony Animation?
Wow.
And that was it. I like quit on the spot. I was like, hey guys, I think I'm quitting.
Okay. All right. Before we move on from the Coffee Bean, I do need to ask you about the ice blended, because to this day,
yes.
James, this is local, right? But the vanilla ice blended to this moment is my favorite drink of all time.
It took
with
the world by
whip.
storm. Yes,
With whip.
Yes.
I mean, this was like this delicious coffee drink, James, and it had whipped cream on it. And I, at one point, literally got so addicted that I would go to my local Coffee Bean and they were very high in calories. Like it was like
they truly were
calories. And I would have one a day because they had caffeine and they had sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect drink ever. It was perfection.
It was like the rock star of drinks, because I can remember when they first hit, it was like lines out the door to get these things.
Wow.
And there was like a row of blenders. Do you remember? And they had these like wooden things that you didn't close so they weren't super loud. Yeah. It was all ice blendeds all day. You would just sit in front of that blender and just one after the other.
Even now, I'm just drifting off. No, let me come back to Sony. Okay, so
today's episode brought to you by Coffee Bean. Yes, to you too.
Right. It is
Coffee
a very
Bean and
local
tea lift
thing, though.
It is. Unfortunately, yeah. So you're at Sony, and then what happens?
I'm at Sony. I will say it's also worth mentioning that, like, growing up again in Southern California, so close to all the studios, the apartment that I grew up in, one of my neighbors, he would like, walk. I'd be at my desk drawing and he'd walk by and he'd see me. And one day he knocked and he said, hey man, I see you drawing. Like, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm just drawing. I'm putting together like comic book samples to go to San Diego Comic-Con and try to get work. And he got me a short little gig. This was before I got into animation, on Mortal Kombat 2.
Really?
Yeah. He worked at an effects house called Tadeo Digital Imaging in Hollywood.
Oh God, yeah.
And he essentially was like, look, nobody here knows what the characters are supposed to do, but we got these dailies coming in and nobody knows what effects to do. So I would get like frames of the dailies and then do all the Mortal Kombat, like Scorpion's thing coming out or the freeze rays and stuff. So it was sort of like a precursor to storyboarding. I was looking at frames of film and then drawing over them. So when I realized, like, oh, through these classes, like storyboarding and animation is a thing that people do.
Yeah.
It came a little bit more naturally. And that was just a benefit of being in Southern California and having a neighbor that was in the industry that lived in my apartment.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm at Sony. I'm working on like Men in Black, the animated series. I'm working on Starship Troopers, which nobody really remembers, but there was a CG animated series of Starship Troopers. Max Steel.
Mm-hmm.
I think Max Steel was maybe one of my first jobs.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was one of my first, animation jobs.
And they were just wrapping up, I want to say, like Extreme Ghostbusters. So I was like,
I'm wrong. Extreme Ghostbusters was my first job.
There it is.
Yeah, those were Jeff Klein projects.
Those were all Jeff Klein projects.
Yeah, so Jeff Klein and also Jackie Chan.
Yep,
that's
Jackie
all
Chan.
Thanks to Jeff Klein.
That's
He was the producer, right? He's a writer-producer, but he's a brilliant producer. And he got me a lot of work early in my career.
And I think, honestly, that was sort of the calling card of a lot of Jeff's projects. It was like, hey, let's take some chances on people that are just coming in. I mean, I had really at that point very little business being there, but I was so amazed that people had cubes and offices with toys and like posters on the wall of films that I loved and art books. And I just remember staying there till like 4 a.m. every day and creeping everybody out. And they were like, dude, do you go home? And I was like, why does anybody go home? We just want to be here. There was a soda machine there that you could just get soda as much as you want. It was crazy.
Soda.
You could get free Coke for unlimited amounts of time. It's crazy.
So those classes, those storyboard classes and everything like that, I would assume those are available now throughout the country, that those are offered in most cities throughout the country.
Yes.
Does somebody have to move to Los Angeles?
No, it's very different now, especially I would say like the sort of like nail in the coffin there was COVID. Like
Right.
up until COVID, it was like, hey, if you really want to be in here, you might want to be in proximity to some of the studios. But like I think that's a done deal now.
So you could do what you do from a distance, like being away from the studios?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always helpful to like be close and be able to be in a room and call a meeting impromptu and stuff. But I know so many artists that never moved to either of the coasts, but also artists that were once here in LA and were like, hey, LA is super expensive. I'm going somewhere else and making the same amount of money. So yeah, I think it's totally available. And honestly, animation is so global now. I can't tell you the amount of the relationship a lot of times to the overseas animation studios when I first got in was sort of, there was a little bit of an us and them. It's like we would do all the pre-production and then we'd pack everything up and we'd mail it all off. And then months later, we'd get footage back and we'd call retakes on that. And it's not that it was antagonistic, but it was sort of like waiting to see what great ideas we had that got messed up along the way. You know what I mean? And then as time went on, I went on to another show after Justice League, and the relationship to the studio started changing, and we all started sort of syncing up and becoming one kind of big organism that was togetherly creating this art. But yeah, so yeah, I mean that was kind of, those were the shows that I was really, I started out as like a revisionist. So I wasn't doing the storyboards. I was just getting the changes that the director wanted to make, and I would make those changes. But I had a template of like, here's the scene, rather than having Wonder Woman like punch, kick, throw. I wanted to throw the guy this way and then turn that way and give this guy a stare first. And so those were like, again, kind of baby steps into storyboarding. And then there were so many artists that I can remember, and this was even through Warner Brothers, they would throw out their work in like a big recycling bin. And I would just at night at that 4 a.m. creep time, I would just go into the recycling bin and like pull all their stuff out.
So you've got some original Bruce Timms in your house, then is what you're saying. What's your address again, Joaquim? If you could give me the location. Drop a pin for me.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a lot of that.
Because I know Dan Reba even said that we talked to him not too long ago, and he was able to go through and he pulled out the original Bruce Timm sketch of the kiss that Wonder Woman gives Batman in the episode Brave and the Bold, I think, is that when that happened, wasn't it? The Gorilla City one, when he's digging through the rubble. And he didn't realize he'd saved it. He was just going through, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. So the stuff that you've got, obviously, the collection probably dwarfs what Dan kept.
And Dan, who was my director, I will say, and I hope I'm not outing him here, but his office was like the equivalent of like the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're like taking the Ark of the Covenant. It was we all had relatively small offices, but it was papers stacked like head height and a little pathway to his desk, and just
that's incredible.
So yeah, I could imagine he had all sorts of treasures hidden in there.
And for Justice League Unlimited, it was basically this first season was you and him were trading off directing episodes because you were the only two directors. A lot of different writers would come through.
Yes.
But did you and him get to pick like, hey, I really want to do Hawk and Dove, so you can take this little piggy, or was that assigned? How did that fall out?
I mean, I honestly don't know. I was so stunned to even be asked at the time that I was just like, whatever you guys want me to do, I'll do. So I think I just got probably whatever Dan didn't want, or whatever Bruce and James thought played to like our strengths or something. I don't know how it all shook out. But those decisions were way above my pay grade at the time.
And for this episode we're discussing today, for those of you listening, we are covering kids stuff. This is the third episode of the first season, originally aired, August 14th of 2004. This is a 21-year-old episode somehow, which boggles my mind. Written by Henry Gilroy, directed, as we said, by Joaquim Dos Santos. The cast on this, I love the fact that D. Bradley Baker is Blockbuster and adult Mordred. Soren Fulton back as Mordred. We have Olivia Dabo back as Morgan Le Fay. Ashley Edner as May. Cheryl Lee Ralph as Cheetah. Jose Yenke as Copperhead. And then we've got the kids. We have Kyle Alcazar played young Batman. Shane, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Shane Habucha played young Superman. Mark John Jeffries, young Green Lantern. And how about that? A very young Dakota Fanning as the voice of Wonder Woman. Unbelievable.
Crazy.
You know what's shocking is that people thought that we voiced the children.
Is that right?
Yeah, they did. And people are shocked when I said that was Dakota Fanning. Like, well, for years I took credit and said, yeah, that I'm just, I'm very talented and I can do young, I can do old, I can do. No, I would say, they had the kids in the room with us. I remember sitting across from Dakota and recording it, but they were so good. And this episode is a favorite of people. I get asked about it all the time. And watching it again, I so enjoyed it because there's such a playfulness to it that most of the other episodes do not have.
I know.
And this is there's some real sweet, joy and lightness to it, as opposed to the next one we're going to cover, which we'll talk about later.
The next one is oddly timely.
Yeah, very, very. Yeah. But so, this was just, and I have to say, Olivia Dabo and Soren, I remember them being in the room with us, and they were terrific. I really bought them as mother and son. Yeah. They were dynamite. He was just, he was a young kid, and he just didn't have a false note in that performance. And it's not an easy performance.
It always blows my mind when I see kids acting professionally. It freaks me out. I'm like, whoa, where is this coming from? I had 0.0 of this control at that age.
Yeah, he was very professional and so good. So when we talked before when we were emailing back and forth, setting up this interview, you said, "Oh, I may have a story or two regarding kid stuff if you want to hear." And I'm like, yeah, that's what we live for. Tell us a story. So if you have a story you'd like to share, James and I would love to hear it.
I'm on it. Yes. So as I'm sure everybody sort of is aware, Batman the Animated Series was foundational to a lot of working professionals that wound up in animation. So I was, as intimidated by seeing all you actors do your stuff as I was by just meeting Bruce Timm and meeting James Tucker. These were names that I would see in the credits. Dan Reba, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is Butch Lucas. This is, so when it came to kid stuff, I can remember James, and that is one thing that I do have that is still original. I have James's original drawings of the kids.
Oh, wow.
On scripts. We went into the recording without having any designs. And as he's listening to all the performances, he's designing them. And then he would hand them off to us to sort of take and disseminate to the story artists. But as we're we'd have meetings where we'd sort of break what the story is and talk about things that we want to see. They were production meetings, script breakdowns and stuff. And during that time, you'd get your designs, you'd get your backgrounds, you'd hand it out to the story artists. Story artists would do their thing. You'd build an animatic. We wouldn't really see the animatic until sometimes it was hours before it was going out to be shipped out to be animated. But as you're turning in your storyboard, it's getting timed by animation timers, and then it goes through a process called checking, which does not exist anymore. But checkers were people that would essentially look through everything, and as a director, you'd have to call out, if there's a laser blast, you'd have to say, it's a red laser blast, and the effect is that it's bottom lit, so it looks like it's glowing. Or the smoke here is opaque, or 20% opaque, or whatever opacity you wanted to give it. But you'd have to mark up the storyboards, and that was your blueprint to hand over to the animators. And so we had a design for Mordred, sort of pre-going nuts, and then a design afterwards where he gets this big armored suit and all this stuff. And I can remember both James and Bruce going all right, so we're covered. Act 1 is pre, Act 2 and 3 he's got the armor, and I was like, baby, it's me. We're good. We are good. I'm like 20, whatever. I'm thinking like, all right,
you were
I'm
a baby. You
Yeah.
were a baby.
And so months go by, right? And I've gone through checking, and months go by. Getting the footage back from overseas is like Christmas. So the footage comes back. We all get together in like a screening room. We're all super excited. The show, I think it's one of the best looking shows of the season. All the models were amazing. The staging was great. Like the storyboard artists did a great job. The animators honored so many of the ideas. Make it through Act 1. We're high-fiving. It's amazing. We get to Act 2. And at the end of Act 1, I think he gets his armor thing, and he's sort of like king of the world. And we get into Act 2, and it's gone. He's back to like Act 1 Mordred. Did you notice this? Yeah,
I did. I was wondering because he leveled up when he first took the crystal, and I remember watching it back. I'm like, where's that look? Because he's back. Okay, that's interesting. Wow.
So that was my bet. I did not confirm. And this was like after asking, those guys asking for double, triple confirmation. So Bruce, aside from being at the time, which I don't know if he still is, was a crazy chain smoker. Whenever he would get peeved at something, his leg would start just shaking. And so we're in this screening room, and we get to Act 2, and he's not in the armor. And I go, ooh, that's weird. He's not in the armor. It's going to be a couple scenes, and then we'll call a retake on that. It'll be fine. And I can see his leg starting to shake. And as the act goes on and then goes into Act 3, still not in the armor, boom, the leg is going crazy. And then I like glance out the side, and he's not even looking at the screen. He's just staring at me like, dude, what did you do?
Ooh.
And I felt like a Han or Lando. I was like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I promise you. It was Geek's fault. It was everybody else's fault except mine, but it was completely my fault.
Oh my gosh.
And I do remember Dan sort of pulling me aside, because Dan was my original director when I came into Justice League, and he was like, "Hey man, this is not good. Like, just so you know, like that's a lot of money." He's like, "You're gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine, but like, you kind of got to eat it. Like, you got to hear why you messed up and why checking's important and why we have these things in place." And he was totally like a big brother to me, during that time. And Bruce was pissed, as was James. James is a way softer touch overall. But he also was like, all right, I think I didn't help, being in my 20s and sort of being like, it's all good, we're covered. I totally tried to use that to my advantage, and it didn't take. At some point they were like, shut up and just listen for a second.
But they kept you. But they kept you, and you kept going.
Yeah.
Even with that costly mistake, which is pretty great that you were able to stay on there.
And since you and I are basically twins now, Joaquim, and we're so much alike, I assume that you're exactly the way I am. If I make a mistake and I realize it and I get called to the carpet, that mistake is never happening again. So I'm assuming same. Yeah.
I mean, there are, that stayed with me for a very long time. And I can remember just beating myself up over it, at night, just being in bed and going oh my God. Whenever that episode would come on and it got to Act 2 and the thing wasn't there, I'd be like, oh, it's coming back. It's striking me.
I only noticed it, though, because I watched the whole episode and then I had to go back because I take some still frames for the podcast the different. I'm like, oh, that's right, his armor changed. And that's the only reason I really noticed it, though, is because I went back to watch the initial scene where they get the gem. So other than that, I would never have caught it otherwise. But hearing you say this, it makes perfect sense. And I love this story.
Yeah. I mean, it was meant to be persistent. And honestly, if it was 2 scenes and it wasn't truly my fault and it was just the fault of it slipping through the cracks, a retake would have been called. It would have been fine. But it was the fact that it was the entire episode. It was you're not the entire rest of the episode. It's
right.
You're not saving this one.
Yeah. Oof.
Oof.
So other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? As they say, but I mean, it is such a good episode though. And I love those beats. I wrote down so many quotes, especially the one where, they're all running into the castle and they pass Batman on the bridge. It's not a race. Right. And they've got to change Etrigan's diaper. And he says, now that's a job for Superman.
That's right.
All those little beats. This is such a fun, joyous episode. I wrote joyous and underlined it 3 times. And I'm sure as the director who got to do this one, you must have had that sense of joy when you were working on it.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't get many episodes like this in this series. So it really was like a huge departure and just have fun. I remember Baby Etrigan being like a huge, everybody fell in love immediately. Like,
oh my God. He was adorable. Like,
and that
adorable.
was Lauren Montgomery that boarded that sequence.
Wow.
Who's gone on, she's directing the Avatar film now, and she's incredible.
Huge missed opportunity not releasing small Baby Etrigan plushies around that time. That would have been, it's like the Baby Yoda of its day.
I know.
Totally. I liked that there was Wonder Bat in it. That there was like a play on the whole Batman and Wonder Woman are still a thing.
Still a thing.
Even with like the kids, and that like, no, you don't. Yes, I do. What? Like there's this like really cute juvenile banter that I thought was adorable.
Fulfillment the Green Lantern got to have with like, what would you actually do if you were able to use a string and you were a kid? Like all that stuff felt like, it was really, really fun. And then, when they go into that crazy liminal headspace sort of whatever that, they're like floating on rocks and there's like, I remember those were all plates that Bruce had painted himself.
Oh, wow.
That were like floating in the background. So I can remember him like painting these things all scratchy on paper. And then all that stuff was fed into to animation. And I just remember thinking like, man, this is crazy. Like Bruce Timm's over here doing little crazy, wild paintings. We're dealing with like baby versions of these characters. And I loved growing up. I was a little bit more of a Marvel kid than a DC kid growing up. So that
interesting.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So sorry. I am so sorry. So sorry.
That's interesting.
If I had known that before. Okay. Fine.
But the X babies were a huge deal for me growing up. So this was sort of like scratching a little bit of that itch as well. Yeah,
that I hadn't made that connection, but that's exactly the connection. That's Little Rogue and in Mojo World and Little Long Shot.
Right. Yeah.
And you were also the storyboard artist on this one. Was that unusual going forward with you guys? Because I know there's so many duties that everyone was doing. Was that unusual? And this was a kind of a storyboard this and direct it? Because you said storyboard artists are the actual directors. Did that make it easier to direct this episode since you storyboarded it as well?
Yeah, I mean, and storyboarding can mean like I helped out on a scene or like a sequence. But I think kind of the natural progression in TV animation is usually, story artists into directing because you're kind of dealing with script coming in, you're in a lot of the records, and then you're dealing with a director. So you're kind of this nexus point for a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the natural progression. I think Dan was a story artist. Butch Lukic was a story artist. When I first got in at Sony, Darwin Cook, who was a director on Batman Beyond, he had left to go to Sony and was directing on Men in Black. And I can remember like just asking him questions like, what was Warner Brothers like? Tell me about the magical times, Papa. Like it was...
No, it's true. And actually hearing all these stories, when we talked to Stan Berkowitz and Dan and so many others, you do get a sense of how special it was. Not that it was like all magical. One of the things that James was just telling us about in our last interview with him was how mechanical it all is, like how it's so hard. And James Tucker, I should say. And that there's show business elements to it, but when you're in the trenches, it doesn't feel like show business.
It does. Yeah, that's true.
And it's a lot of really meticulous work and timing and everything. And but hearing about the camaraderie, and it was less corporate. You got the sense that the corporate piece wasn't nearly as intense as it is today.
Yeah, and it's weird because when Justice League started, again, I think we were the first round of hires that grew up with Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of coming in like completely wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and going like, oh my gosh, you're the name that I saw on the thing that I like informed my childhood. And it's not that like those guys, I would say Justice League was like the pinnacle of that time. But they were sort of, it was like Saving Private Ryan a little bit. Like those guys were kind of coming back from the front, and we were going, and we were like, what's it like? And they were like, all right, just settle the hell down. Just buckle in. I can remember, and James was the person that I think might have seen my portfolio when I had applied at Warner Brothers, because he was the first person I talked to, and he was like, hey, I saw your stuff. Looks cool. We'd like to bring you on board. The first episode that I directed, it was magical because part of the board wasn't working, and we had literally a day left before we had to like turn everything in. And he was like, just give it to me. And overnight, he reboarded this entire sequence. And that to me is like the most romantic artist memory that I have, where it's like, oh my God, overnight, this guy took what it has taken us 4 weeks to do, and he overnighted it and then turned in this absolutely beautiful board. And I can remember it in that moment feeling very much like a child playing like in like an adult sort of world. I was like, wow, they were superheroes.
That's right. They really were. That's one of the thrills of, talking to all these people, and hearing the stories. And again, James and I have kind of a romantic feeling about it. I being in those rooms and having been at the time so scared most of the time and intimidated most of the time.
You'd never know it. I'll just say that from the outside looking in, it didn't seem that way.
Oh, I don't think I relaxed for 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, really, it was a tough room for me to be in, but I mean, a glorious room, and a room that I loved more than anything, but it was very intimidating. And, and just hearing, and it's not like we hung out together. It wasn't like I could go hang with Bruce or Andrea. Now I've gotten to know some of the people better because I see them at Comic-Cons but mostly what's been so sweet. And I said this to James all the time, like, this podcast has given me a chance to get to know some of these people. And that's been such a gift because we didn't have these conversations, obviously, when we were working. You finished your job and you went home. Yeah. And now we get to, look back, and there's all this nostalgia, but there's also all this truth telling about what it was and what it took. And it's really nice to shine a spotlight on the storyboard people, the artists, because the actors always get so much glory.
Well, and deserve it. I mean, I'm always amazed. I never really I couldn't contextualize it when I first got in, but there is something about the sound of somebody's voice either does the thing or it doesn't do the thing, and it's like, I would always get my mind blown especially more in features where you're dealing with a lot of we're building reels and we're doing temp voices to just sort of occupy the space until the actors can come in. I mean, you can just feel it. It's like that doesn't work for a reason. It's like you guys come in, you have an aura, and that aura gets projected into the microphone. When it would happen and it was all of you in there playing off of each other, it was crazy. So it was very deserving.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, listen, we're going to be here till 8:00 tonight. We're going to move on. Okay. So James, do what you do.
So with this, we're very excited to have you. Hopefully we can have you back many more times, but we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. If people want to keep up with you, are you very active online, social media, things like that, Joaquim, or are you just constantly hunkered down, constantly drawing and working on the next Across the Spider-Verse film and things like that?
Yeah, I'm kind of hunkered down. Every once in a while I'll post, but I mainly just kind of lurk every once in a while and favor somebody's artwork or something.
Very nice. So lurking online at a social media site near you then.
That's right.
But this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we can talk to you again very soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
There he goes. A fantastic first time on our podcast, Justice League Revisited, covering kid stuff. Joaquim Dos Santos. He's probably off and he's going to go immediately draw something or direct something else because he seems like he's constantly busy.
He's constantly busy, and he is such a nice guy. And that was so fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we didn't get really deep into the weeds on the episode, but I wanted to hear his story, and I knew people would appreciate it. And what a story. I mean, to find what he wanted to do so young and then be able to find these opportunities, and people would, like walking by his place. And, it was so exciting hearing how he started and how he got involved. And he's just a lovely guy. I really enjoyed that.
That just shows you the level of talent too, when people are stopping and taking notice of what you do and be like, hey, I'm a person at Sony. We'd love to have you come. I mean, that's astonishing. At the age of 20, I was like, probably riding my bike off the edge of a thing to impress some girl. So shows you the very different, but I could immediately relate. Like I said, I could relate to everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, we might be related, Joaquim.
I know.
It's just everything he said, this movie. I'm like, I love that movie.
I know.
Grew up watching this. Me too. It was, I've never felt a stronger connection with another human being through a Zoom screen before. It's amazing.
Wow. I mean, no, two peas in a pod. And I felt a little like an outsider. No, it was sweet. It was so sweet. And I love when you can really geek out and fly that geek flag, if I can keep going with the geek
Feel free.
feeling. Okay, thanks. That was lovely. Lovely. Yeah. And he's not a social media guy, so it's not like people can really find him there too much. But He says he posts once in a while. But they can find us if they want us. So you want to tell people how they can find you?
Sure. I'm easily accessible all over social media on Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Twitter at Geek to Me Radio. We do a live program every Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 10 p.m. Eastern. You can tune in for a live show. Click on the YouTube link. That way you can watch us as long as Joey V, who helps out this show quite a bit. If he's live in studio with me, then we run video as well. And we just had Michael Ironside, the voice of Darkseid, of my show a couple weeks back. It's always so much fun to do that live radio and have that live interaction. So check us out there. And of course, we've decided we are going to do a second year of Two Rivers Comic Con. This year's theme will be 80s and 90s. So let your imagination run wild, kids. But follow us on Instagram at @2 Rivers Comic Con and give our Facebook page a like for more updates as we move forward. And what about you?
Also, well, and let me just say, I'm so thrilled that you're going to do a second year, because as somebody who attended the con, I loved it so much. I loved the location. Your team was extraordinary. They were kind. They were helpful. It was such a perfect weekend. And so the fact that you're going to do it again is just like, it should be one of many, many, many. That's what I hope.
Let's hope so. Thank you for saying that, though. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate.
Well, you did. You did pay me.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Anyway, so people can find me on Blue Sky and Instagram mostly, at Susan Eisenberg 1, the number 1, and then my website, SusanEisenbergVoice.com, to find out where I'm going to be. And you can also email me there if you want to say something about the podcast. Somebody wrote me the other day to say they listened to our podcast and they loved it. And that was so sweet. So
very nice.
Yeah. And please, subscribe to the podcast if you can, and leave a review if you can, because it really does help us. And we want to hear your feedback. So if you can go do that now, go do it. Okay.
Right now. Go
do it now. All right, so is that it? Is this a wrap? Another one in the can?
A wrap on kid stuff with Joaquim Dos Santos.
All right, well, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you soon. And just stay tuned, because the conversation continues.